Alright, let's just get this out of the way. Episode 5 of Season 2 is the worst episode in Hazbin Hotel Season 2. Not merely content with waiting for Episode 6 of its season to be where the show jumps the shark, as Season 2 hasn't jumped it several times thus far, Episode 5 will be especially daunting to get through with how much bullshit it throws at me. So we begin this ordeal with Katie Killjoy announcing what was already televised in episode 4 in her inconsistent southern twang as well, before we are immediately inundated with our first musical for this episode named Bad With Us. Guess I'm glad we already got one of the 3 musicals, yes, 3 for this episode, out of the way already, even if abrupt. As for the song, not only is it totally off base with how it changes its sound, but it also uniquely has bad lyricism. Fox literally tries to rhyme laurels with dorals at one point. Didn't know Spindlehorse wanted to take inspirations from rap slant rhyming here, but what else is new? As for the chorus, camouflaged as character growth, a number of sinners and or overlords, the distinction gets harder to discern, have taken these news as evident that Vox is not playing around, and Vox takes this opportunity to recruit these people to his cause of wanting to uprise against heaven. Notably, we see some from episode 3 of season 1, like with ZZ, who has a singing role that is incongruent with how she sounded in the single line of dialogue she got in season 1, Zestral, who is quite disinterested with what Vox is selling, and Carmilla, whom Vox tries to appease by dressing in the most stereotypically Mexican getup out there. Remember, this show was also fine with portraying Nifty as stereotypically Japanese in her song, yet Vox doing this was beyond the pale. Way to go on what you want your audience to take away there, show. As for what Vox intends to do, now having Alistair as his cudgel, I'm not sure why he didn't try to spin his uprising against heaven before the events of Season 2 even transpired, if we are to go off that a month, or 6, have passed between Season 1 to 2. It was already a hard pill to swallow that Vox was trying to imply that a power vacuum formed in Season 1, but if he was just trying to convince himself, then what was his plan to get other people convinced he was powerful before now? Vox himself didn't even go out of his way to get Alistair in his clutches this way, which means that Vox isn't nearly as clever as the show wants you to believe he is, as he did not orchestrate Alistair's eventual kidnapping this way. Back at, we have Hotel California at home. Charlie opts to try to signal any help to Emily from the balcony instead of, I don't know, using that fucking embassy back in season 1, because Charlie is established to be an utter dipshit, while Vaggie spectates in delight. Vaggie asks what Charlie is up to, as though Charlie didn't tell her until seeing her like this, and upon Charlie stating the obvious, Vaggie assumes Emily gave Charlie no means to contact her. I mean, beyond that the embassy apparently doesn't exist for season 2's sake, yeah, why did Emily not give Charlie any other means to contact them? Vaggie and Charlie were able to get a portal to heaven so casually in season 1, and yet, now it's suddenly really difficult for conversation to be made because of that lockdown? Anyhow, Charlie is frustrated that all her want to get Emily's attention leads to nothing, while Vaggie comforts Charlie in her petty attempt to do so. We also get a reminder that Vaggie is going on that arc of changing her name, because that's all the show writers could muster in terms of giving her anything to work towards. Charlie also bemoans Alistair getting himself captured, what with him being the host of the hotel, which is a confoundingly selfish thing for Charlie to put that responsibility on him when she was the one who brought upon the notion of this hotel in the first place. Worse yet, Charlie, upon mentioning Alistair, actually gets concerned about what the V's might be doing to him, but Vaggie retorts that he's okay, and that he's always getting up to something. And that is the last time these two will show any concern about him until the final episode of Season 2. Good thing Angel Dust didn't give a shit about him leaving, because I imagine if he did, these two chuckle fucks would have just shrugged and moved on regardless. So what was even the point of teasing his involvement with the hotel and his ulterior motives too, if it was just going to amount to fuck all then? Like, imagine telling someone who only just watched the pilot that Alistair would have been completely ignored as an entity from throughout season 2 of the show. That would certainly disappoint them and many others, and the only reason that Alistair is getting ignored like this is purely for the sake of Vox's plot to go unabated, otherwise season 2 wouldn't be happening the way it does. Charlie is convinced that the only way to beat Vox is to prove that Penchas is alive and that Charlie is telling the truth. Truth is relative to what they want to believe, but do go on, Queen. And Vaggie ponders that there may be a means of which to stop Vox that Charlie hadn't considered. What she hadn't considered is so baffling when we discover it that it's honestly strange that wasn't the first thing she thought to do, but alas, Charlie is the kind of person who couldn't visualize spinning an apple in her head. As we follow Vaggie to where she plans to go, we also get several scenes in which she is assisting various patrons of the hotel with their needs. Do I need to remind you again that Charlie wanted so badly for people to come to this fucking hotel, and yet sees fit only to do the equivalent of a boombox serenade to Emily? I get this as merely to supplant Vaggie's increased responsibility of the hotel, but is this also supposed to get me to find Charlie wholly uninterested in the very thing she did this whole social experiment in the first place? Vaggie comes across Angel Dust, who the two discuss more of these therapy sessions with a Family Guy-esque cutaway of Husk, calling some volunteer various synonyms for stupid, while Baxter studies these words to his vocabulary. This is all merely for humor and not any development, although Angel Dust not attending these on account of his headaches may be foreshadowing for a reveal in episode 6 of season 2. Something to notate about Vaggie coming across Angel Dust is that Vaggie tells him that she's going to Lucifer and in they walk the opposite direction from each other. This is more important than you'll ever know for episode 6 again, but knowing what Vaggie intends to do, why hasn't Charlie gone to talk to her father for assistance at any time? Remember, she wanted his blessing to get in touch with heaven and somehow was able to get that in the following episode. And yet, when Charlie needs direct contact with heaven, Lucifer is nowhere to be seen, nor is Charlie to find him as well. Vaggie arrives at some floor of the hotel and of Lucifer's private room. Reminder, Angel Dust is not present in any of these shots. Keep that in mind. And we also get a visual gag of a "No Alistairs Allowed" sign on here. Like with Alistair killing that rich dude being interpreted as him killing a racist, people also took this sign to be a nod to Jim Crow era laws, when really, Lucifer personally doesn't like Alistair, as had been shown throughout. But I guess I lack media literacy according to these people because I pay attention to what the show actually shows and not spuriously attempt to draw from meta. Lucifer hurriedly greets himself to Vaggie in his duck costume getup. This is foreshadowing for his utter retardation for later, whom still can't remember Vaggie's name or any other hotel patron's name for that matter. I suppose that is consistent with him not remembering Angel Dust's name, but it also implies that Lucifer is quite distant to the people who meagerly helped him rebuild this hotel and are assisting his daughter of all. In fact, much of Lucifer's dynamic in Season 1 apparently kept with him going into Season 2, as he's still a shut-in, as when Vaggie asks him about Vox, he apparently isn't in the know what he's been getting up to the entire time he's been cooped up in his room. Vaggie reminds Lucifer that Vox had been getting at Charlie, the hotel, and what it stands for weeks, and this is enough for Lucifer to get enraged about that. That's all well and good, but do you mean to tell me that for weeks, Lucifer saw fit to do nothing, and that Charlie didn't go to her father for that amount of time as well? Vaggie suggests that with Lucifer being the king of hell that he could do something about Vox, including smite him. And in we get a line that, like with Charlie saying that heaven has no means to know what gets someone into heaven, jumps the shark for Season 2.
I'll let you in on a little secret. I cannot smite him. No, it's kind of part of the whole hell thing. You see, it isn't just a place, it's a punishment. And mine is that I'm stuck here with all these sinners, can't kill them, can't do nothing with them.
Wow, who wrote this?
Jesus Christ, where to start with this utter horseshit? So you mean to tell me that heaven's punishment to Lucifer made it so he can't do nothing about the sinners, yet gave Lucifer all of his power such that he can use it to fight back against the very angels who punished him? What an arbitrarily convenient limitation of him supposedly having powers in a place made to punish someone like him, but none of the people sent there? Is this also why none of the sinners are concerned about treating Charlie like garbage because they know Lucifer can't do nothing about it? And won't that get even stupider when we discover just how much these sinners know about him? Because that doesn't square away whether the other deadly sins could do something about these sinners, including Vox, either. Secondly, you mean to tell me that Lucifer, for 10,000 plus years, never found a loophole around this, or had other people inadvertently cause harm to people he finds distasteful? I know this show loves to pick and choose what parts of the Bible it wants to adapt, but Lucifer is also known as Lucifer the Deceiver, meaning that he of all would know his way around a condition like this. And if you think that isn't something the show makes canon, well, tell me, how does Lucifer fight Adam? Oh yeah, he shapeshifts into various animals, a power that is inexorably tied to someone who wants to trick and deceive people like he did with Eve if the opening monologue of season 1 is to be believed. Thirdly, in order for this punishment of Lucifer's to make sense, would also require that hell actually function the way it does, which it evidently fucking doesn't. So why is Lucifer uniquely the only person burdened with a punishment, whereas the rest of the hell denizens can do as they please up until 7 years ago? Honestly, it should be Lucifer's punishment that he has to punish these sinners, and perhaps he coops himself inside because of how disillusioned he became with doing it. In fact, had that been his punishment, means that him not going through with it would have then followed the logic of heaven then going through with the purges afterwards. Sort of like the tale of Loki's punishment regarding Sigyn. It might not square away his utter resentment of sinners, but just me spitballing this is leagues more interesting than what the fuck this is, and is once more a mere concession for Vox's sake. Furthermore, we add on to the retardation that Vaggie mentions to Lucifer that while that might be the case, Vox doesn't know of this and can bluff his way against him. So that means Lucifer never once considered to do this whole time, because like with his daughter, he's little more than a cheap, lying, no good, rotten, four-flushing, low-life, snake-licking, dirt-eating, inbred, overstuffed, ignorant,
blood-sucking, dog-kissing, brainless, dickless, hopeless, heartless, fat-ass, bug-eyed, stiff-legged, spotty-lipped, worm-headed sack of monkey shit he is! Hallelujah! Holy shit!
Lucifer is a bit reticent to assist even with this in mind, up until Vaggie invokes Alistair's name in regards to being unavailable to, and that is enough for Lucifer to get back into form to confront Vox. So Lucifer doesn't care that Vox is lying about his daughter, or what Vox intends to do with hell and or heaven. He only is doing this just to stick it to Alistair? I mean, I get he's the sin of pride and all, but is that really the takeaway the show wants us to have about him? We cut to Charlie, absolutely exhausted from trying to get Emily's attention, before we then cut to Emily and the council witnessing this from some kind of globe of theirs. So do pray tell, didn't Emily state that Penchas couldn't see his friends, yet neglected to mention that she had a bird's eye view on the goings-on of hell? Was she lying or was she stupid? Your guess is as good as mine. Upon Emily seeing Charlie waste herself for her, wants Sarah and them to go talk to her, but Sarah is initially against that idea, saying that it isn't a good idea for them to go to hell with how hell views them. Emily says that they owe hell a massive apology.
And you know what else is massive?
And sure, heaven has a lot of guilt on their hands, but I don't think saying, "it starts with sorry," is going to cut purges that were done indiscriminately, in secret, and with no justification as far as the show has concerned us with. Noting Penchas, he comes in by Emily's request because he of all would know what best to do about this dilemma according to her, and Sarah is initially against that, what with him not being the highest council member of heaven. Emily does her typical rebellious child act, and that's enough for Sarah to relent. So I guess that was the show's way to account why Emily never brought Penchas here to begin with, because if Sarah was just going to fold like a house of cards to Emily's demands this way, why hadn't Emily brought Penchas here sooner? Emily asks Penchas what they should do, but before Penchas can even make a suggestion, Emily and the council save Sarah have plenty of their own, including giving Hell a bunch of gift baskets with various trinkets. Yep, these utter dumbfuck nitwits are going to apologize for years upon years of wanton acts of destruction with fucking gift baskets, as though that wouldn't be the most patronizing apology you could stomach for such an act, and that they, being as dumb as they are, was in no way another out for the show to allow Vox the opportunity to spin this against him like he has for every other time someone was stupid around him. Glad to know that this show will have me collectively root for the villain as a result. Sarah manages to be the only voice of reason in this room temperature IQ meeting, saying that doing this is also a bad idea and that there may be nothing they could say that would forgive their actions towards them. Unfortunately, Penchas also joins the dipshit brigade by saying,
It starts with sorry.
which should not at all quell Sarah's fears about this, but nonetheless, she also relents to this optically bad move as well. Also, in this entire decision making about going to hell, they do not bring Penchas along either, and once more, there is no reason why he can't, nor why they don't bring him along. If their intention is to prove to hell that he was redeemed, that redemption is possible, and that the hotel had something to do with it. No, instead, they bring Lute along, who would have every reason to be antagonistic to hell, not just because she personally doesn't believe they deserve redemption, but also that her doing so would provoke heaven to go to war, something she clearly wants to happen. You'd think that would be something Emily or the others would concern themselves with, but again, they're fucking stupid for the sake of the plot, so that's covered. But you'd especially think that this would be something Sarah would have considered, and not just roll over like a tumbleweed to every hairballed scheme they insist upon her. Alas, Season 2 can only exist with this in mind, as does most of this season's existence. Back to hell, Charlie is bombarded upon by Emily's embrace, whom the former is feeling a bit delirious as to whether Emily and them are even here. Speaking about that portal, so Emily needed to make a portal in a rushed manner in episode 1 and 2 of season 2 before the lockdown closed in, yet here, she and them were just casually able to form another during the lockdown in episode 5. Great going on the consistency there, show, like as if you had any left. Emily lets Charlie know that they have brought gifts, and shows her one of the gift baskets with a plushie that says "Sorry" on it. This is a level of condescension that I would expect South Park to parody, but alas, Hazbin Hotel wants to take this as absolutely sincere when it's anything but. I'm sure Emily probably should be telling Charlie why they are here, or why they brought gift baskets, but if she did, Charlie would also tell Emily that this is a bad idea as well for them to go through with it. Charlie immediately asks if Penchas is fine and if she can see him, and Sarah only mutters that the snake is fine and that they are sorry that they didn't bring him. This is still not a sufficient explanation for why he can't come or why they didn't bring him, and you'd think them bringing him would wash any doubt from the hell denizens here, but alas, I guess Sarah really does believe saying, "It starts with sorry," will suffice. Charlie is so delirious that she doesn't even fathom the notion that they are here, and uses this as an opportunity for them to clean up her own dirty work, pretty consistent with how much of a tool she is, about the smears Vox has draped across her image. There is a small exchange from Abel that drives much more of a wedge in the awful writing of this show, as he is completely in the dark as to who Vox is, and by extension, Heaven as well. So Heaven are apparently aware that hell has this resentment towards them, that Charlie has tried to commune with them, but are not aware of the guy who is perpetuating this resentment towards Heaven? That's awfully convenient for the writers, and not anyone else that they are specifically ignorant of that. The formalities of Vox's involvement aren't important, as Charlie just wants the Heaven Council to go to one of his rallies to clear up her name and theirs, emphasizing that they are sorry in the most brazen display of supercilious contempt cloaked as earnest. Also, real convenient that this rally just so happens to be occurring at the same time that Charlie tried to get in touch with Heaven, Heaven deciding to intervene this way, and of how Lucifer will involve himself with said rally for later. Also, if Charlie wants the Heaven Council to clear up their image, why does she not mention Lute's presence at any time while this is going on? Shouldn't that be a conflict for Charlie to suggest Heaven do this with her around, knowing that she's anathema to it? fuck it. Charlie has been riding the short bus of riding thus far, might as well take it the whole goddamn trip. We cut to the so to speak rally that Vox is hosting, in which he and Valentino hype themselves up for the stage. There's a very peculiar interaction between them where Vox asks how the dancers are doing and Valentino responds he had to include an inferior one for diversity. So does DEI exist in hell? Why would DEI exist in hell where the morality and sensibilities of things would be flipped on their head? Did the show writers forget again that this show takes place in hell and not modern day California? Meanwhile, in the studio, Alistair butts in to try to get into Vox's TV head about his built-up insecurities about his authority amongst the V's. This leads into Vox saying that he's the face, and that he was the only one who had the vision to make any of this happen, interjected by Valentino to his annoyance. Again, this is more than likely Alistair trying to drive a schism between the V's, and that Vox himself is getting lost in his own sauce that he's neglecting the people who got him to this echelon. Although, what I find perplexing about all of this is that there is more intrigue and subtext going on here for what is essentially two antagonists than what we've ever gotten for our protags from throughout Season 2. Kinda makes one to consider that Vivienne really couldn't give a toss about her female characters, if it quacks like a duck and all that. Adding on to Vox asserting his authority, he initially has Valentino shoo off to assist the dancers, but then immediately changes his mind to have them work backstage so that Vox can take more stage presence, all within witness of Alistair and for his sake alone. Again, this is to emphasize Vox's growing second-guessing about his purpose amongst the V's, while adding on his conceits towards Alistair as a once-bitten, twice-shy role model. Vox makes his stage presence known to the crowd and gives the usual rousing speech about what they're going to do about heaven, invoking Lilith's name as a source of inspiration for this defiance against them. This was alluded to during the opening monologue of Season 1, although in that context, it felt much more nebulous of a empowerment rather than seemingly an attempt at an uprising, something that Charlie will take umbrage with Vox invoking this for later. Vox's little stage performance gets cut abruptly by Lucifer's presence and the presence of our second musical for this episode, named Vox Populi. There will be another song in this episode that invokes a Latin phrase like it does here, although Vox invoking this will be fairly inconsistent with other things he refers to, so more than likely he's just using this as clever wordplay for his name, a name that he presumably gave himself? Lucifer does his usual bombastic display while Vox watches, completely nonplussed to his sudden appearance here, and there is a reason, albeit stupid, why Vox isn't the least way bothered by him. As for the song itself, what with Lucifer inserting himself mid-stage performance like this does not in any way deter Vox from being able to perform as well, as though he somehow expected Lucifer would turn up at this moment for him to retort. This is perhaps the most oblique example of a musical going out of its way to break the continuity of things so that it can happen the way it does. Regardless of that, what of the lyrics? Well, Vox once more invokes Lilith's name as some kind of uniter of those divided, while also saying that with his influence and their renewed unity could make hell great again. Like, I get that he's the central antagonist, but why are we invoking a Donald Trump slogan here? Well, Vivienne herself decided to blur the lines of that association in one of her blue sky posts, which is a complete contradiction of the heaven bad, hell good dynamic that Season 1 poised, which, given that Vox had been doing the Gabe Newell approach of do nothing, succeed anyway, is Vivienne implying that the Democrats and or left are stupid for the sake of Trump? Getting out of politics once again, Vox says that there is salvation for the sinners, but not in redemption, but by a complete overthrow of heaven. Getting me to wonder if there would be a meaningful distinction if they were to succeed then. Like, what is the plan afterwards? Do the same as they had been before a yearly purge hung over their heads? Speaking of, Vox also invokes that overpopulation excuse as incoherent with what both Charlie and Carmine said about it, and then tries to rouse the crowd against Lucifer by stating that he's a despot who would rather the sinners live in eternal suffering than rise up. Yeah, that would require that hell is a place of eternal suffering, given this, so to speak, suffering has only gone on for the past 7 years. But perhaps this was just a means to rage bait Lucifer to do something about Vox, as he once again mentions his absentee wife and says that the only way angels resolve things is through silence and smiting. Yeah, that might have been the case if these purges had gone on for several millennia, not 7. So what kind of action of the angels are you inferring from, Vox? Vox calls Lucifer on his bluff as he stops himself short of punching him in the face, while adding on that Lucifer is chained down here and that he doesn't have any chains on him. Okay, Pinocchio, but this just further compounds the utter stupidity that Lucifer can't do nothing about the sinners, roundabout or otherwise, yet the sinners can literally interfere in mortal lives, as was demonstrated through Alistair. Lucifer walks out frustrated as Vox takes pleasure in his defeats, along with the V's for that matter, which means that somehow Vox had anticipated Lucifer to come here and make a fool out of himself at this very moment to feed more ammunition to himself. Good thing he did it at this exact time, and not before nor after the Heaven Council butt in. And of course, the Heaven Council, including Charlie, pop just as the song ends, and Vox immediately takes the opportunity to frame their appearance as an attempt to silence him. Although, I'm unsure whether he knows he's full of it, episode 6 of season 2 will clarify that, or this is him genuinely being afraid of what they might do to him. Emily clarifies that they are only here to apologize for everything, emphasizing that the exterminations are what they want to apologize most for. Vox doesn't buy this and finds that their way of apologizing distasteful the moment he notices the gift baskets. Wow, who would have fucking guessed that wouldn't have worked and that no one told them how this would look? Guess the entire council had their brains caved in when considering this. This also means that Vox framing this as a negative had nothing to do with his own cleverness and was solely reliant on this council being shit for brains to apologize this way. Meaning once more, you have chipped away at his impact as a central antagonist. Abel makes sure to remind the audience how worthless of a new addition to this show he is by trying to excuse the gift baskets as having really nice taffies inside of them. Close enough. Welcome back, Adam the Clown Master. Emily is stuttering over her words as Charlie is lapsed to impart because she too can't seem to do shit but go on her phone. And Vox takes this insincerity as an opportunity to claim that Heaven is truly here just to flex on the Hell denizens, adding that they need to pretend to be powerful because of the blow they struck against them. Yeah, said blow requiring that Heaven were stupid enough to leave the weapons they are supposedly weak to, mind you. Although, whether Vox knows this and is just playing into the fears of Hell is another matter we can get into regarding episode 6 of season 2 again. Lute being here is also bad PR for the Heaven Council as she takes exception to what Vox says while Emily tries to hold her back, trying to make good of a bad thing. Yep, good thing there was only one brain cell shared between this whole gaggle that all this is happening the way it does, in Vox's own benefit too no less, and he didn't even have to lift a finger to do so. Although, Vox also manages to widen the proverbial crevasse of this show's world building after Emily's fetid attempt at apologizing, again, as he states that thousands of sinners have died from each of these exterminations after he rallies the audience to Heaven's hollow words. To iterate, Vox does not say tens of thousands, he does not say millions or billions, he says thousands, which means these exterminations were a completely empty gesture from the start if their intention was to hold Hell's uprising at bay. How? Well, Adam says to Vaggie that Charlie would not take it kindly that she's been dating someone who has killed thousands of her people in season 1. Lute states that she killed 275 of them in the last purge, so assuming that thousands by Vox is anywhere between 2,000 and 9,000 means that these exorcists are incredibly incompetent, or that there is only a handful of exorcists who take part in these purges. Adding on that this is still incongruent with Carmine saying that there was a 16% cut in season 1 means that the overall Hell population is much smaller than assumed, yet also we're supposed to believe that Hell has the numbers against Heaven by the last musical we were subjected to. So either the purges were too effective that having them done so was unnecessary if we assume this population is small that thousands could cut the population by 1/6, or the purges were an utter fool's errand if there was a overpopulation issue. Fox shows a collage of various exorcists getting at the sinners, and Charlie sees this as more of his negative spin against heaven, before Vox mentions how Lucifer came in to threaten him just before the Heaven Council chastised him. Yep, real fucking lucky that Lucifer came by at the moment he did and left just as Charlie realizes this, on top of Vox being able to get 2 golden opportunities to spin this in his favor. And am I also supposed to believe that Lucifer never told Charlie he was going to do this either because he was selfishly interested in getting at Alistair? Of course, Lucifer also got hit with the idiot ball as he tries to slink away in embarrassment rather than teleporting like he's done in Season 2, because anything for that humor at the expense of character writing, right? Also, upon Charlie seeing him, is noticeably more angry at him than what Vox is doing or anything Vox has done from throughout Season 2. Keep this in mind for what an absolutely reprehensible cunt Charlie will become for later. Fox calls out this council on their bullshit, and Charlie and Emily are feckless to deter the crowd away from their avarice. This gets Sarah fumes enough that she turns into extra Reddit angel mode here and adds that
sinners like you are the reason I allowed for the extermination in the first place.
Wow, who wrote this?
Well, so much for wanting to have good PR with hell. Sarah is just as conceited as Charlie is by literally feeding into the fears hell has about heaven. But assuming what she's saying is true, why did Lilith stop short of carrying through with it? Why is Lilith able to just chill in heaven if she was power hungry and violent that forced Sarah's hand to carry out these purges? And because Sarah can't tell the difference between her ass and a hole in the ground, Vox has the perfect bait to lure his audience once more into a furor, ironic for later, against heaven. This also parlays into our third and last musical for this episode called Vox Die, at least I believe it's pronounced die as Latin for God, although it would be ironic what with him being an allegory for Trump that it's DEI. Mainly, the song feels like an addendum to Vox Populi, given it's not even a minute and a half in length, and purely feels like an opportunity to flex the animation style here. Adding on the allegories here, Vox says he's the Führer, although translated to German is Führer, and that is exactly what is meant to be conveyed here, as seemingly incoherent and just about as far left as you can get with making a hastily drawn parallel between Trump and Hitler. Like, is using Latin and German interchangeably also congruent with this allegory according to the show? And does Vivienne also believe Trump and Hitler are secretly gay, what with Vox's feelings about Alistair and his affair with Valentino? Upon the utter failure to make any of this work, the Heaven Council portal out to a defeated Charlie, sombering over how badly their PR stunt had been curtailed. I mean, all this was purely on the fault of Heaven and not Vox to spin it, because even if Vox wasn't a constant web of lies, anyone with a functioning brain would see gift baskets as insincere, a genocidal maniac being present as bad optics, and the lack of proof as to why they changed their minds telling. As I said, everyone in Season 2 would be a inconsistent dipshit for the sake of Vox's plot. There's a quick scene where we see Penchas playing with his newfound egg minions before he's reunited with the Heaven Council, all of which are disappointed about the news that Hell has made an active declaration of war against Heaven. I'm sure Penchas isn't sure how to take all this, but I imagine saying, "Oh no," feels awfully blasé for someone like him. We cut back to the hotel where even more residents are leaving, presumably on this declaration and of guilt by association of Charlie being with that Heaven Council. But Charlie could give less of a shit about that and just wants to confront her dad on intervening prior to her arrival. Thanks, show, for reminding me just how careless she is about the very thing she proposed back in Season 1 and the pilot. You're totally convincing me that this show hasn't strayed far away from its initial premise. Also to emphasize, Charlie is more upset at her father doing this than how the Heaven Council decided to apologize or how Vox was so easily able to spin this, because I guess those daddy issues thing is going to get redressed here despite them being excised earlier. Lucifer is also a pants-shitting retard as he sees fit to hide behind a fucking chair over being told off by her daughter. The show wants you to simultaneously treat him as not serious, but when convenient, super serial when they need him to be. But I like to think that, like with most of the characters in Season 2, he also is a glue-huffing moron. Lucifer tries to clarify, poorly, that he only threatened Vox because he was trying to help out her, adding that Vaggie gave him the idea to do so. Charlie is put off by this while trying to shift all the blame on him for how their PR stunt got so cocked up. Vaggie and Charlie have a back and forth where Vaggie is the only person with a semblance of intelligence, while Charlie tries to guilt trip, shift blame, and cry bully until the hell cows come home. Like with Lucifer, Charlie is more upset that Vaggie asked for Lucifer's help behind her back over her not telling Charlie that she was an exorcist for the last 3 years they were together. Really fucked up priorities, but alas, Charlie at this point doesn't care about her people and only cares about her image as a princess of hell. Vaggie attempts to tell Charlie that spinning shit is what Vox does and that she's playing right into his game, and Charlie can only pivot that Vaggie isn't on her side. This drama gets worked up to the point that Charlie will just handle matters herself if Vaggie isn't willing to go down with the ship, and exasperated, Vaggie leaves to have Charlie bury her head in the sand. Congratulations, writers. You have made Charlie dumb, you've made Charlie a child, and now you made her such an unlikable, irredeemable, petulant piece of shit that now I have to say that Adam might have had a point in not going through with her plan back in season 1. Because how can someone entertain an idea if the person proposing it doesn't have a fucking clue how to achieve it? How can someone who seemingly is only doing this to prove herself to her fucking mother have pure intentions about this plan? Why should the audience root for someone who is this willing to put her hand on a hot burner and somehow blame other people for why her hand is burnt? And it's funny. Vivienne claims that she put a lot of herself into Charlie come season 2, and most people's takeaway about her now is that she is wholly unlikable as a result. If the idea of season 2 is that Charlie constantly gets rage baited, does nothing but go on her fucking phone for a solution, is prideful, spiteful, and that she'll grow as a person from this, then what does that say about Vivienne if she can't learn from these mistakes then? Are we supposed to see what Charlie doing here as noble? It's the most poetic irony that putting so much of yourself in a character can make people immediately identify their worst traits about themselves, and yet the person who did that can't and will continuously make things worse for everyone else, like Pirate Software did when it came to his character insert in Heartbound. Because let's keep in mind that Charlie jumped the gun on wanting to prove redemption was possible based on little more than hearsay, peer-pressured angel dust against Vaggie's wishes after cornering herself to Vox, yet simultaneously is going to blame Vaggie for doing something behind her back? Charlie has had more than ample opportunity to stop careening her derelict hotel in front of her fucking friends, yet does so anyway. Charlie has also seen fit to push the responsibilities of the hotel on Vaggie, so Vaggie would have more concern about how much of a PR nightmare Charlie is, and she somehow can't see that? What does that say about Vivienne that either she adheres to Charlie's values in this manner, or that those are her values intrinsically? If I worked for her and this was her takeaway, I think I would run far the fuck away from this. Charlie continues her blame everyone else for my fuck-ups tour by stating that Lucifer should leave, and he does, much to his dismay. Guess we aren't going to have Lucifer stand up for himself at any point in this show either, even if the argumentation did transfer to Vaggie and Charlie. The last nuggets of episode 5 is a montage of our characters sauntering over what transpired. Vaggie gets a hard drink, Lucifer packs his things, Penches comforts Emily, and Charlie does what she does best: go on her phone to call her mother for the 1000th time. Noting that bit, Vivienne also said that she wanted to devote time to Charlie calling her mother at the end of every episode, sort of like a so to speak children's show back in 2010 that had a end of lesson message at every episode. Beyond that, Vivienne really thought this was important enough that it needed its inclusion, but it becomes more apparent that this show is little more than Friendship is Magic but juvenile, and yet somehow Friendship is Magic took its themes, characters, and plot with more sincerity and depth than Hazbin Hotel ever fucking could. Because at least when Twilight Sparkle or the main six would write their lesson to Princess Celestia, she would actually read it rather than it just being ignored. What does that say that a fucking children's show didn't treat its audience like drooling retards, but Hazbin Hotel, a show made for adults, does? And fortunately Finally, that is the end of episode 5. To reiterate, this is the worst episode in season 2, as Charlie gets reduced far beyond just being stupid for the sake of the plot, as the plot congeals its existence by making all of its characters stupid as well. Several more world-building issues are thrown here, Fox continues to succeed by doing nothing, and let's not forget that this show uniquely jumps the shark twice to allow the antagonist to get as far as he does, and what more he'll get up to for the remainder of this season. All I can say before we go to episode 6, thank fucking God that nightmare is over. We start episode 6 with Vox giving a spiel to Carmine about what Lilith sought to do those 7 years ago, mentioning that before she could attempt to wage war on Heaven had seemingly vanished from the conflict. Again, unsure as to whether Lilith wasn't around at the twilight of this uprising or that she was gone while it was waged, and there will be little elucidation as to whether either is true or not. The reasons that Fox and Velvet are here is to convince Carmine to assist him with this war, while both Carmine and Velvet have to reconcile their beef from episode 3 of season 1. A beef, I remind you, that happened over half a year ago from the timeline of things, so it's odd that both Carmine and Velvet are stuck up about it. Although, more than likely, this is a means to drive more of the theme of Vox spinning in the face of those who support him, as he puts Velvet through the ringer of her being new to the Overlord business with her antics thus far. Carmine is still disinterested in assisting Vox by way of saying that he's the one bringing angels to their doorstep, with Vox countering, quite obviously, that she was the one who armed the hotel with the means to fight back in the first place. Yeah, not sure why Carmine didn't expect that to be brought up, and more importantly, was that also something that Heaven hadn't considered how Hell knew how to fight back against them and who was supplying them the armaments to fight back? Also, in some of the shots in this scene, we can also see the knife that Nifty used to kill Adam poised here, getting me to ponder if Charlie in the hotel only borrowed the weapons provided by Carmine over outright buying them. Because even so, that doesn't square away the spoils of the weapons dropped by the exorcists they had killed, or even how those waylaid weapons were divvied up. It would have been an interesting, albeit awkward, conversation that we didn't see about how that matter was arranged, rather than just having to spitball theories as per usual. Carmine claims that the circumstances were different, even though the result would still be the same, and Vox is able to counter that by saying her supplying the means of fight was paramount to a war happening to begin with. He also goes full Anakin Skywalker by saying that she's either with him or against him, while also reminding her of said knife that killed Adam as well. He makes the arrangement somewhat juicy by saying that he can ensure the protection of Carmine's daughters, characters we still don't know the names of going into season 2, as his emotional guilt trip to have Carmine relent. Man, wouldn't we love to know why Carmine cares about her daughters so much that that is enough for her to comply, rather than a basal inference, but basal inferences are all this show can offer. Carmine agrees to assist by way of building his weapon, and we will know the circumstances of this weapon come episode 7 and 8 of season 2. Fox also does a typical supervillain laugh from her agreement, which you'd think that would really get Carmine to reconsider her choice if she has a fucking conscience. Fox and Velvet leave, and the latter pulls her veil to rip into Vox for throwing her under the bus despite them having been able to make the deal. Fox does say that Velvet fucked up the one meeting that I had you do on my behalf, which if that is the case, I already alluded to that in episode 1, then why did Vox re-propose the uprising against Heaven to her then? Wouldn't her proposing that back in episode 3 require that Vox told Velvet what he had planned? Regardless, Vox leaves a frustrated Velvet to vent, feeding further foreshadowing of Velvet and in future Valentino to be fed up. Back at Carmine's office, Zetchel comes by to ask why she surrendered herself to Vox. To Carmine, she doesn't want to lose anyone else, as we pan to a shot of her looking at a pair of rings. Presumably this could be alluding to her losing her husband or significant other, although whether this spouse died to the purchase specifically or something regarding Hell, well, sit and spin to speculate as always. Zestral's a bit miffed that Carmine is doing this out of fear and opts to not join her in this conquest, saying that he'll rejoin her when she comes to her senses. And that's about all that Zestral's worth regarding Season 2, save for a scene in Episode 8. Like, why am I to even humor his impact in this story if the total runtime of his appearances is not even 5 minutes, much less anything he has done in those 5 minutes has amounted to much? Back to the Never Was Hotel, Vaggie is doing a bunch of busy work around the hotel because the rest of the staff are worthless here until she fixes a TV which oh so conveniently exposits to her Vox's recent exploits. We also get a scene that is once again doubly confusing with how we are supposed to take it, as Vox states to the camera that he loves women in STEM. So does Hell also have a higher education system that this would matter to them? Do Hell denizens care about gender equality in the workplace? Is gender equality to the detriment of all else funny to this show or only to Vox? What is the joke here, and can people laugh at it for the wrong reasons? Also in this broadcast, the announcer mentions Scream Rain, which is the title of this episode, but said title has no bearing on the story, unlike how the other episode titles were mentioned by a character yet still managed to be referential to that episode. It's merely a weather event that feels like their version of the Screaming Goat to fill dead air. As for what Vox got up to involving Carmine, guess it was a good thing Vaggie was the one who saw this and not Charlie, because if she did, she'd likely have a response like this.
Why can you not stop lying? Please stop lying! What is wrong with you? Like every single thing in this fucking video, your newest video is a lie!
Vaggie rushes over to the bar to alert the hotel staff of what was just relayed, although all of them are collectively disinterested in that. Notably, Charlie is also here to drain her sorrows to Husk, who has no interest playing therapist and wants Vaggie to deal with it, before we get a line from Charlie that continues to exemplify her new cunt-like status.
She's perfectly fine doing whatever she wants behind my back.
Shut the fuck up, you cunt!
Keep in mind, this is coming from the person who has been perfectly fine to sabotage the image of the hotel whenever she feels like, regardless of what other people think, except for Vox of all. Man, she really does take from iDubbbz in how you can blame other people for your own fuck-ups, which means that Vivienne is just one unsuccessful show away from becoming a lolcow herself. Vaggie and Charlie decide to play a game of passive-aggressive war to Husk that is enough for Husk to leave the hotel as well. This is also the only time that Charlie actually shows concern that someone is leaving the hotel, as she hadn't for Alistair or any of the residents who had left because of her actions, but because Husk is a named character and is otherwise insignificant to mention to the plot, she can? Husk's rationale for leaving the hotel is that with Alistair gone, that he too can leave, which if that was the case, why hadn't he left sooner, and is that a justification that Nifty can use as well? It seems the only reason Husk has left to stay is because of Angel, something Cherry mentions that gets Husk to hesitate only for a moment before he ultimately commits to the deed. With how much of a trope it is that our named characters are leaving this hotel, I wonder how much longer it'll take before Cherry or Angel Dust leave too. That's some foreshadowing in regards to Angel Dust. Charlie is upset that with Husk gone that now someone else has to commandeer the bar, but not that she was in some way responsible for Husk leaving to begin with. Responsibility and accountability are words that don't exist in Charlie's vocabulary for this to make sense. Before Charlie and Vaggie can dramatize some more, the TV inexplicably gets loud enough for them to refocus their attention to it, with Vox perking up Charlie's ears and attitude by mentioning her mother again as an icon of their renewed interest to strike back against heaven. Charlie takes umbrage with this framing of Lilith's dream, claiming that she never wanted bloodshed and that she only wanted to empower sinners through some kind of peaceful protest. Charlie, if that is the case, then why was whatever Lilith did enough for Sarah to commence the purges? In fact, if these purges happened those 7 years ago, was that not something Charlie put 2 and 2 together as a consequence of Lilith empowering those sinners? And what does empowering sinners lead to that wouldn't result in an uprising in heaven, Charlie? What would they be protesting against if not the very framework of which heaven and hell operate? Oh joy, there goes me again, thinking far ahead of whatever the writers ever considered in regards to the tepid world building of this show. Anyhow, Vaggie is distraught that Carmine would relent to building this weapon for Vox, and she and Charlie, like with their conflict in episode 7 of season 1, decide to go together despite their differences. Vaggie has Nifty take charge of the hotel, and this too is little more than humor of Nifty to do bug things at the hotel. As Vaggie and Charlie doze off, we catch where Husk went off to, and he has decided to imbibe his worst tendencies by going to some casino to play his hand and outdrink everyone there. There's a small cameo of Zach Hadel voicing some random demon that I wouldn't normally put attention to, but with Vivienne constantly stepping on the toes of those in lieu of being dismissive of criticism, she decided to like a post and made a jab at those who like Smiling Friends because it isn't as deep as she thinks Hazbin Hotel is. I haven't watched Smiling Friends, so I have no money in this race, but of course, this is deeply unprofessional coming from Vivienne to do this while being buddy-buddy with someone closely associated with said show. Again, the parallels between iDubbbz being a snake and her are getting blurred now. In indulging his vices, we also get our first musical, of 3 for this episode, named Love in a Bottle. As for most of the musicals, it's the usual hors d'oeuvre of a fourth wall break with all the insistence upon itself that would make Peter Griffin blush. Although, I will say there is dynamism in the delivery of Husk being carefree into drinking away any care before he becomes so utterly shit-faced that he can't tell up from down, and even the visuals accentuate how tipsy he's getting from it. Not to mention that this is to accentuate how Husk needs his own escape, as Angel Dust so put it, more on that in a moment, and finds purchase in the gambling and drinking so as not to garner any kind of deeper attachments to people, even the conditional ones like with Alistair for instance. We tune back to Charlie and Vaggie arriving at Carmine's factory where the two bicker a bit before Carmine douses the lesbian drama to discuss. Charlie and Vaggie talk over each other about how absurd it is that Carmine is playing for Fox's team before the two cool again, and Charlie imparts that this wasn't what her mother wanted and that heaven poses no threat to them anymore. Carmine retorts quite convincingly how assured she can be of that when Vox just declared war, and boy wouldn't Charlie have loved to know what heaven thought of that. Too bad there isn't some kind of embassy in hell that she could freely communicate to them at any time or something. Vaggie then chimes up that they know that the hotel works, but still not how it works, which is a big how to consider, and wonders why now of all that Carmine wants to work for Vox. Being cyclical, Carmine uses the same rationale she used to arm the hotel back in season 1 as her reasons, adding that she wanted to protect her own and that really they were the ones who made this war even a possibility. I mean, that's some reverse psychology if we completely forget that Carmine knew what was weak to those angels and knowing that made weapons despite also being largely against the concept of waging war against heaven. If Lucifer is a selfish asshole who wanted to watch his own sinner kind being mercilessly slaughtered, what does that make Carmine that she would willingly let hell infight while heaven purged them? Carmine further prods Vaggie, knowing her storied history with them, and we get a collage of Vaggie going through a PTSD flashback of her being hazed as an exorcist along with what she likely witnessed during those purges. So, given that we now know that these purges lasted for 7 years and that Vaggie was off the hook from them for 3, she got hazed by Adam and Luke for what was only 4? Maybe I'd buy that she'd have a lot more trauma about what happened if these purges occurred for longer, but not this. Also, with these flashbacks also means that Adam giving those exorcists names doesn't track with them being inducted into this program, unless Adam just gave them code names and Vaggie somehow forgot her actual name in the process. Additionally, if Adam named Vaggie because she was the best at what she did, then how does that follow with them hazing her in these flashbacks? Unless Vaggie being hazed motivated her to be the best at what she did in fear of reprisal, although that doesn't track with her growing a conscience knowing what would and did happen to her. And with how ruthless Adam and Luke were about bullying these exorcists, was that not something Sarah ever concerned herself with in how they were treating their own kind if she ultimately went through with these purges? With Vaggie giving the 1,000-yard stare, it's once again Charlie's time to bat as she pleads that we should never become them, whether that's Vox or Adam, take your pick, once more vouching her mother as an authority on the right way to empower oneself. It becomes more and more clear to me that Charlie never really cared about saving the sinners from eternal doom and really just wanted to be a suck-up to her mother, someone whom is deliberately distant from her for reasons, yet Charlie really hopes she comes back with the milk. Like, when Charlie said that, "I'll make you proud, mother," I just figured that that was a expected line of any person to say about proving themselves to their parents. I wasn't aware that I was supposed to take it that she was slavishly invested in proving herself to her, and this godforsaken hotel was a means of which to do so. Does Lucifer not play into this at all, despite what that musical in episode 5 of season 1 would have you believe? Carmine doesn't care what Charlie's mother has to think about this and is committed to playing for the winning side, thus ending this debacle between them. Charlie expects Vaggie to pipe up some more, but the latter is too much into their own head about being reminded of what she went through and walks away from a clearly distraught Charlie. Wow, and you'd think Charlie would have asked Vaggie plenty of questions about her life as an exorcist, that Charlie would think that that subject would be touching for her, not to be a pedant about why Vaggie doesn't pipe up, but of course, Charlie is purely self-interested as of late. We return to the casino in which Husk is plastered on the booze, enjoying how carefree in a time where he had to be nothing but careful, as he looks over to some broad about ready to perform some kind of song. The song is our second musical for this episode, and the song is being performed by none other than Angel Dust in drag, something that completely ruffles Husk's feathers upon seeing. I guess it was lucky that Husk just so happened to stumble upon this performance at this casino in particular, especially given that the last musical we see him getting kicked out of multiple tables. Anyhow, the song is called and somehow Angel Dust goes 2 for 2 on being the only song in this season that has a in-universe justification for its presence here, as it's him performing in a sultry manner on a captivated audience. As for the song itself, it's not really much to analyze other than that what Angel Dust may be alluding to ties into Husk living for that rush of drowning himself from all the woe and worry of today, and really, this is just the animators wanting an opportunity to sexualize Angel Dust, again, with all the sexual confusion of a bi-curious Christian. Regardless of that, at least the musical is short and to the point, and doesn't feel like a forced inclusion like most of the songs on this season. Back at V Tower, which is looking more and more like the Tower of Babel, which may be intentional, we see Valentino trying to get someone who can perform at the level that Angel Dust can. Does that mean his contract is off the table? Before Vox butts in to escort the performers out and asks Valentino if he can borrow him for a moment. There will be significance to this and a lot to discuss when that pivotal scene happens, as I've already implied over and over again how much episode 6 breaks much of Vox's rationale for things from throughout season 2, so do keep a pin on this for later. Although there is poor reasons we can get into now, as Vox proposes that he borrow Angel Dust so that he can make the Princess of Hell kill herself, and I'm not sure if this is supposed to be literal or metaphorical, but this too will be contradicted by what he also needs from her come episode 7 of season 2. Regardless, there is growing resentment between Val and Vox about how this was supposed to be their plan, and Vox reassures him that they've been partners, in business as an addendum, for decades, and that him borrowing Angel is merely for clout. Valentino isn't willing to budge, and Vox adds that he can give some alone time for him if he does this tiny favor, before Velvet comes out of nowhere to interject that,
"Funny how you make time for us when you need something,
And again, this is perhaps heavy foreshadowing for Velvet and Valentino's growing frustrations with Vox and how Vox is selfish in his own right. Also, Alistair just so happens to be present. Was Vox not aware he put him here before escorting those performers out? To once again goad Vox into asserting his authority over others, and Vox does so by grabbing Valentino by the cuff and attempting to use his hypnosis on him to coerce him to do what he wishes. Yeah, the selective times in which Vox uses this hypnosis will cause more problems for later, but knowing that he can hypnotize people, why does he need to do the whole convincing thing in the first place? Valentino shakes Vox off of him, saying that Vox knows that his hypnosis doesn't work on him, which if Vox did know, why did he do it to begin with? However, I think Vox once more made a hasty decision to prove himself to Alistair without thinking, something Alistair fully expected him to do, as Valentino gets heated that regardless if Vox asked him that he'd do it anyway for his plan. Alas, this whole entire sequence is made to have the audience garnish sympathy for Valentino, you know, the guy whom the audience is also supposed to root against because of what he's done to Angel Dust and what he's going to do to Angel Dust in future. I mean, wouldn't it be the first time that Spindlehorse tried to woobify a frankly awful person because Vivian can't kill her darlings? It just feels really discordant that the writers made Adam a one-dimensional villain, yet they'll give all the deference and sympathy for someone like Valentino, which will get worse come episode 8 of season 2. We awkwardly segue to the
Hash Brown Motel,
in which Vaggie finds a hotel in utter disarray because of Nifty running the place. Again, this is purely for comedy and no further drama, as Nifty just shows Vaggie some kind of jazz band comprised of bugs because of her collaborating with Baxter. No, we got some more drama to quell in this episode established in the prior episode again. What do I mean by this? Well, Vaggie goes to the penthouse in overpaced fashion to see that Charlie has constructed some kind of blanket fort with tea set for the two of them. Charlie figures that perhaps, maybe, just maybe, Vaggie was right about being hyper-fixated about her mom and Vox spinning his bullshit. That's great and all, but is Charlie going to apologize to her father about chewing him out? Yeah, we can get to how this show won't get to that for later. Vaggie is receptive to that and acknowledges that she too can be a bit heated at times about not being heard, but assures Charlie that she still loves her through thick and thin. Charlie isn't so keen on being forgiven so easily, believing that she got caught up in the drama in an attempt to make the hotel something her mother could be proud of her for as her way to finish what she started. If this is supposed to make the audience endear to her, it doesn't, and only proves more that Charlie was conceited less so than altruistic in her pursuits. Charlie also believes that if she proves herself to her mother, she can also find out what drove her away to begin with, which I'm not sure if Charlie believes she's guilty of her leaving without knowing why, or that she does know why, but if Charlie again knows that Lilith left and that immediately followed with the purchase, did that not occur to Charlie that her mother was at fault in some way? Charlie is utterly somber about letting her anguish out at Vaggie, saying that she drives people away, including Penchus in that mix somehow. What did she do to drive Penchus away from throughout both seasons exactly? But what really gets me up in a tizzy is that Charlie continues to bawl out about what has her concerned before Vaggie immediately stops her to enjam our third and last musical for this episode, named Is It? What is notably rancid about this song is that Vaggie interrupts Charlie about all of this pent-up frustration and worry just to sing about how she has her as a way for the two to have sex. I can't believe Hazbin Hotel would take inspiration from this, but this is the equivalent of Vi wanting to have sex with Caitlyn, knowing that her sister is thinking about killing herself in Arcane Season 2. Because people are going to accuse me of being homophobic, I am not against the idea of two girls naturally coming around to wanting to have sex with each other because of their bond. But the placement of this right in the middle of what transpired is so utterly jarring, just like it was in Arcane Season 2. Hell, even Charlie tries to snap back to reality about needing her friends back and of the impending war before Vaggie just tells her, "Shut up, baby, you know that I love you." Which shouldn't at all be reassuring to anybody, much less Charlie, given that was already a matter of fact and all the love in the world doesn't stop a fucking war happening now, does it? If not for the last song in this show, this would easily, ironic, be the worst in terms of how early tone deaf it is. Also, reminder, this is coming off the back of a Vaggie who saw her trauma flash before her eyes, was at Charlie's throat just a few minutes earlier, and returning to a hotel that was already a mess beyond Nifty running the place. Is sex her way of pushing out her worries over Charlie's own? That's the only way it makes sense that Vaggie would press this upon the two of them. We tune back to the casino bar where Husk gets unexpectedly greeted by Angel Dust, presumably done with their performance. Husk tells him that he was surprised to see him working here, and Angel merely states that he's a man of many jobs. A little perplexing that Angel Dust is one of the bigger names in Hell's porn industry, yet Husk wasn't aware that he also does drag shows, but maybe that wasn't something Husk kept up the tabs with. Husk tells Angel with no fanfare that he quit the hotel, something that comes off unfortunate to Angel, although he rationalizes that with Alistair not around, he doesn't have any reason to. Additionally, Angel believes that with the botched attempt back in episode 3 of season 2, that redemption isn't possible for people like him, which unfortunately means that Angel Dust is being put right back to square one, even if this is merely his interpretation of events. More on that resetting his dynamic for episode 8. Husk apologizes for getting upset at him back in episode 3, clarifying that he wasn't really mad but felt he wasn't worth the trouble, vindicating my prior thesis that Husk wanted Angel Dust redeemed, but not redeemed for his sake alone. I would praise this small moment between two side characters, but this is two side characters we are talking about having more depth to what is going on than we've gotten for the main protags of this show. Angel Dust has to leave to do another job and expects to see Husk back at the hotel despite his objections, mirroring a similar dynamic between them back in episode 4 of season 1. As for the job itself, Angel has come from a cab to meet Valentino, who tells him it's little more than an escort at some kind of rundown motel. Like a Hazbin Motel, anyone? I try. There will be narrative significance behind what this entails, as was already foreshadowed earlier in the episode and this analysis, but as of now, Angel assumes it's your standard one-night stand. Angel waltzes in the motel looking for his escorts before he discovers to his dismay that it's Vox, who immediately takes the opportunity to wrangle him and hypnotize him like he attempted to do with Valentino. Angel Dust is able to fight back, although the struggle is clearly one-sided in Vox's favor, who states that despite being more trouble than he's worth, was able to find a use for him. And what use that might be, you ask? Well, Vox abuses Angel some more, just keep in mind of that for how the show will inevitably woobify him for later, and how Charlie perceived of him, before spouting some declarations to Angel Dust about how he was always one step ahead of Charlie, how he knew the angels were coming, and how he knew Lucifer couldn't hurt him. He's saying this to Angel Dust, who has been largely absent from what happened in Season 2, so it's more like he's saying this to the audience rather than him, but I'm sure you're also wondering how the fuck he knew any of that. Well, Fox tries to get Angel to think back to any late-night jobs he did, saying that there
wasn't a moment I haven't been watching.
And we get a collage of Vox presumably modifying Angel to be a spy for the hotel, where there are various scenes in which Angel, knowingly or unknowingly, did such a thing. We also see that he had several messages with Vox whom instructed him elsewhere, although it seems this too was redundant, what with him being hypnotized earlier. Okay, now let's discuss this sudden new power pulled out of his ass. Before we can even do that, let's try to establish just how early Vox did this to him. We do get a shot of Angel looking over Pench's scrabbled together fortifications, which would make this compulsion as early as episode 7 of season 1, but I like to think that it could have been as early as episode 6 of season 1, what with Angel having come back from another long shift at his job. Assuming it is this early means that Vox should have also known that Vaggie was an angel too, and he does mention this in episode 8 of season 2, yet never used it against Charlie for some reason, and that he shouldn't have been surprised that the hotel was going to fight back, or that they were able to fend them off if he discovered through Angel what the angels were weak to. And given that this whole Heaven Uprising thing came out ahead at the start of Season 2 and not at the end of Season 1 requires that the events of Season 1 played out as they did in Vox's favor, inadvertent or otherwise, something he couldn't have possibly known. Now knowing that Vox can make someone an unwitting spy for him, then tell me, why didn't he do that to Sir Pentious if he had instructed him to spy on the hotel? Why did Sir Pentious need to plant cameras around the hotel as opposed to being the literal eyes and ears for Vox Tech? Was that something Sir Pentious was immune to, or did he simply refuse to? Pulling back everything that I alluded to this pivotal scene, Episode 6 does the unique thing in which the show lies to the audience about what they had seen. What do I mean? Well, in Episode 5, Vaggie and Angel Dust walk opposite directions from each other, and the scenes we do get between her and Lucifer do not in any way suggest Angel Dust is nearby, but in Episode 6, presumably Vox instructed Angel to go eavesdrop on them. How could Vox have known that Lucifer would have told Vaggie his dirty little secret at that moment, or that he had a little secret to even tell? Does he do this for every time he suspects something is amiss? Because Vox claims he knew the angels were coming, which has to be the Heaven Council who arrived in Episode 5. So did Angel Dust also have his ear to the balcony in a scene we didn't see? And how could Vox time their arrivals in the manner that they do that wouldn't be an inconvenience to him exactly? And if Vox did have Angel Dust as his spy, why did he come humor Charlie in Episode 3 of Season 2, or even had Charlie go to the studio in Episode 4 then? Hell, if Angel was under his compulsion, why didn't he use his subliminal compulsion to sabotage his redemption process in Episode 3? This all feels like it was pulled out of the show's ass just to explain away why Vox was not perturbed upon seeing Lucifer and tried to write him as more clever when it only makes him lucky. More on that compulsion, the show also plays fast and loose with just how much Vox can compel out of Angel through these scenes, as it seems the most he can have Angel do is scrub messages and follow people around. I'm also uncertain as to whether Vox can record anything that Angel has witnessed and spin it spuriously, although I imagine doing so would cause more skepticism from the hotel that Angel has a wire. As for Angel being used as their spy cam, why him specifically? Can Vox not do it to Charlie, Husk, or some vaguely powerful overlord? If he did do it to Charlie, or at the very least, did it to the extent of her being a straw man for him to beat down, would at the very least explain some of Charlie's frankly impudent rationale so far. There were several hotel residents sprinkled from throughout Season 2 that Vox could have also done the same but didn't, and given that Charlie had been thus far cold to them, would have better explained Vox's ability to be one step ahead that didn't require the show fold into a pretzel for his sake. The reasons that Vox is telling Angel any of this and has been playing with his food is in order to hypnotize him again to relinquish his part in the hotel. Not sure how this compulsion is any different from any other time he's hypnotized him, and if he's already been successful, why does he need to do it harder the second time around? Oh well, guess we'll save what Vox will use Angel for into Episode 7. Hack at the Bazhin Hotel, Husk has indeed returned, reconsidered because of Angel Dust primarily. Although Angel is nowhere to be seen, according to Cherry, which is curious to the both given that his pet hasn't been fed, nor has he been answering Cherry's texts. Yeah, they'll also somehow discover that Angel Dust is being mesmerized through Vox, even if it would be strange for them to see Angel act this uncouth. We get our post-nut clarity of Vaggie and Charlie, whom the former says that they've faced impossible odds before, through sheer luck and incompetence might I add, while the latter consoles her and calls up her father. As for him, he does the Stolos, not the guy to emulate, by watching some kind of soap opera involving ducks before he gets that call from Charlie. You'd think this call would be a bit weird for Lucifer, given Charlie said that they need to talk elsewhere, as opposed to right now. And why is this call suspicious? Well, apparently, we get another new power pulled out of the show's ass that Vox can also replicate the voices of other people as he poses as Charlie making this call to Lucifer, as he needs him as a power source come Episode 7 and 8 of Season 2. I mean, I'm kind of impressed this episode could pull more bullshit out of its ass near the end of this episode, but let's discuss. So, in order for this to work in Vox's favor, he somehow had to have known that Charlie was trying to call Lucifer at the same time he did. Remember, he doesn't have his spy at the hotel at this point, and that his call overrode hers. Second, he once again has to assume that Lucifer would be stupid and desperate enough to not have any questions about this call. And third, that Vox only decided to lure Lucifer into a trap now with having Angel as his puppet as though a necessity? And if Vox can so perfectly emulate someone's voice, why hasn't he used this technique to smear the residents of the hotel by chance? This show really underestimates how powerful it would be to not only have an unwilling spy do your bidding, but also to be able to mimic someone's voice as well, that Vox only does both of these once and only once for the sake of the plot. And that was episode 6, and I'm convinced that this has to be worse than episode 4, purely by that this episode lies and misleads its audience about what they have been witness to. Still not the third worst episode in this season, but episode 6 does continue the awful trend by having that tone-deaf musical, giving Vox inexplicable powers he only uses when the plot requires him to, said powers also causing further rifts into his scheming from throughout season 2, and all of this being heralded by the collective intelligence of a walnut. We've only 2 more episodes to put this pitch and shit excuse of a season into full circle, but for those, you will have to wait for the final part of this analysis.